My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, it is estimated that some 80,000 microcomputers are now in use in United Kingdom schools, and that at least 120,000 teachers have been trained to instruct in their use.
Whilst thanking my noble friend for that good news, will he say whether it is now true that as a result of this imaginative policy, Britain's schools now have more computers per pupil than that in any other nation? And if so, does not this mean that the present generation of school attenders will be better equipped to get jobs in the expanding sunrise and service industries than their predecessors?
My Lords, I don't know of any league tables, as it were, of the amount of computers in other countries, but I can say that I think we have far more microcomputers than people think. For instance, a recent survey has indicated that secondary schools have on average 8.7 microcomputers, and for primary schools we estimate on the basis of reports some 1.2 micros per primary school. I would agree entirely with the latter question that my noble friend asked me. I'm sure this does indeed equip youngsters for employment in some of the newer industries.
My Lords, is the Minister aware of the studies by the Equal Opportunities Commission and other bodies which indicate that girls get less than a fair share of experience on the microcomputers in schools? And can he tell us if this side of the problem is taken into account in the teaching training programme, and if not, why not?
My Lords, I was not aware of that. It surprises me if that is in fact true, and I shall take great pleasure in looking into it and coming back to the noble Baroness about it if it is the case.
My noble friend aware that whilst his first reply is very commendable in many respects, many people will hope that this obsession with computers and such like will not interfere with paying real attention to developing the natural talents of reading, writing and arithmetic in the young people of today.
My Lords, I really do not think it is a question of a choice between the two. I think the two can go hand in glove.
Could I ask the Minister, if the government has a sustained commitment to microtechnology in schools, will the resources be made available for the purchase of new data and retrieval systems, because there will be a constant need for updating. And with local authorities pinched for cash, there's going to be a need for more government grants from either Department of Industry or from the Department of Education. So could we hear whether the government really is committed to producing more money for this programme, which I thoroughly approve, for the future?
My Lords, the original government scheme was to be a pump priming exercise, and I think that has worked very well. Many schools, and indeed many LEAs, have also bought extra equipment, and it is hoped with the basis basic equipment that is available at the moment, that schools and LEA should be able to build on this from their own resources.
Would my noble friend agree that the next step is that computer learning should take place under all subjects across the curriculum? And would he confirm that this is now underway, especially within pilot courses for 14 to 18-year-olds being run by over 60 local authorities, supported by central government through the Manpower Services Commission?
Yes, my lords, I would agree with that. And in fact, much of the spending on equipment purchased for projects under the TVEI is for new technological devices.
My lords, could I ask my noble kinsman if there are adequate computers in special schools and schools with handicapped and disabled children, because computers are of great benefit to these children?
Yes, my lords, this is a very large field in which the disabled can benefit. I think my noble kinswoman might be interested to know of two examples, rather surprising examples, in which the microcomputer can help both the physically handicapped by enabling them to produce text for the first time, and it can also help those with severe learning difficulties, those with severe mental handicaps, to learn simple life skills such as how to dress themselves. And both these areas of work are included under the government's microelectronics education program.
That his reply will be studied with interest by persons concerned with regional development, particularly persons in regions concerned with economic development, training and education. And I'm thinking particularly of persons in Northern Ireland. And may I further ask the noble Earl if he could indicate the comparative figures, regional figures, especially for those for Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, and if he hasn't the figures readily available, if he will undertake to publish them.
Yes, my lords, the figures I gave were for the United Kingdom, which included Northern Ireland. I will, of course, write to the noble lord if I can get hold of the detailed figures, if such are available.
Is the noble Earl satisfied with the government's record on books as on computers?
Yes, my lords.
My lords, is the noble minister aware that in the United States they introduced computers at an extraordinarily early age as an experiment of very young children, and that they, the young children, have taken to it remarkably well? Is that the situation in Great Britain, or if not, is it not a point that perhaps our Ministry of Education might examine?
I think it is exactly the same in this country as it is in the United States.
May I ask my noble friend, the Minister?
Far from the last questioner, could the noble Earl secure that the children in our schools reach an adequate personal standard in numeracy and literacy before they embark on a course on computers?
I don't often agree with the noble Lord Alexander of Potterhill, but I think I would on this occasion. I think particularly some children with very severe learning difficulties are indeed motivated by computers, and because of computers they often find it encouragement to help them in the basic reading and writing, and I think the two do go together.
Next question.
Lord Broxbourne.
Lord, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the question of mercy killing was reviewed by the Criminal Law Revision Committee in their report on offences against the person published in March 1980, and had been reviewed earlier by the Royal Commission on Capital Punishment in 1953. Both reports concluded that a distinction in law between mercy killing and other offences of homicide could not be recommended. The government, while acknowledging that there may be individual cases in which killing is done wholly from motives of compassion, accepts this view.
While thanking my noble friend for that reply, is there not a case for further inquiry now? While all would or should accept the paramount necessity of safeguards against abuse, was there not a natural sadness when recently a respected judge felt it necessary under the present law to send to prison somebody he described as Christian and compassionate, for hearkening to the entreaties of a friend in distress. And isn't it something of a paradox that whereas suicide ceased to be an offence in law more than 20 years ago, it is still a crime to assist another? And would my noble friend have regard to the growing sentiment amongst thinking people, of which recent evidence was in the powerful plea in the Sunday Times, a responsible organ and not noted for its radical views, for the need for review, revision and rationalization of the law, and would the government institute an expert and representative inquiry?
My Lords, my noble friend has referred to the case, I take it, of Mrs. Hoff, who found herself in a most difficult and distressing situation with which we sympathise. But we do not think that the general law should be framed in a way which might allow less scrupulous people to act for financial gain from malice or from other base motives against those rendered vulnerable by age or illness. I have reminded my noble friend of 2 full reviews of the law in this respect. I would remind him also that they revealed substantial difficulties and disadvantages in the way of the reform which he advocates, and that bills with a similar purpose were refused a second reading by your Lordship's House in 1969 and again in 1975 by 85 votes to 23 on the latter occasion.
May I ask the noble Lord whether he thinks, with great respect, that in view of the life and death issues raised by euthanasia, religious, moral, and theological, question time may perhaps not be the best occasion for discussing those grave matters?
My Lords, if the noble Lord is seeking to shorten my interrogation, I agree with him.
Notwithstanding, my Lord, is the Minister aware that the prelates on these benches, and in fact the Church at large, were particularly encouraged by the government's very sympathetic understanding of the Church's concern for the sanctity of human life, when in fact this question of euthanasia was last raised in this House? I had thought it was in 1976, but I bow to the greater wisdom of the noble Lord the Minister about that period of time, I think. And is the Minister also aware that the growing support by the government for the hospice movement, rather than for euthanasia, has also been noted with much gratitude by the churches? And so finally, would the Minister take note that the same principle of the sanctity of human life, which is at the very heart of the Judeo-Christian tradition of our country, is again raised in acute form in the Warnock report concerning the control of experimentation on live human embryos, which clearly the Minister won't want to comment on in detail this day, but is all of a piece in terms of this matter.
My Lords, I am grateful for the Right Reverend Prelate's recognition of Her Majesty's Government's support for the hospices movement. There are some 90 hospices in the country at the moment, of which about 50% receive some sort of government grant, and over 100 home care teams as well. My Lords, we share the views of the established church on the sanctity of human life, but the Right Reverend Prelate is right to anticipate that I cannot comment on the Warnock report.
Will the noble Lord allow me to quote briefly a few words from the Sunday Times? No.
Question. I really think that the House will not expect the noble Lord to quote briefly, even if briefly, which I question. I hope, therefore, that he would ask a question now. We do have a very long debate in front of us. We don't want to go on for too long.
I was about to ask the question whether I might be allowed to quote briefly from the Sunday Times. Very well, I won't quote. But I do recall the... Is the noble Lord aware of the fact that his noble friend and I recall a Sunday Times editorial of the 14th of December 1984 which said that this issue had been swept under the carpet, and it was about time the government took it out and had another look at it. And is he further aware that there are a large number of people who recognise, although this is a difficult and complex issue, it is about time we had another look at it, and that his noble friend is entirely right in that view?
My Lords, I am now aware that there was an interesting article in the newspaper, but I am not aware that it is yet time to review the law.
Can the noble lord please tell us that should any noble lord making an inordinately long speech apparently succumb to the heat of the television lights, would that be classed as euthanasia?
Surely we are treating this. Surely we are treating this in a somewhat frivolous manner. We, as peers, remember, have privileges. One only privileges as a human being. It is the privilege of choice, which alone out of creation has been given to us. The ox dies, lives, because he has no other choice. We have the choice, and that's a choice which is given us by the Creator. To deny us that choice is, I ask, is it or not to deny us that kind of choice, and then go in for absurdities like imprisoning this woman is to behave as a religious court and not as a court of law.
If I can infer a question from what the noble lord has said, I would answer it by saying that the people that the noble lord seeks to help are by definition weak and defenseless, and if he opens those of them who wish to die to the hand of the merciful, he also exposes those who are afraid to die to the hands of the merciless.
My lords, on a somewhat lighter note, does not the healthy appearance of your lordship's house this afternoon, and indeed of your lordships, indicate that anyone trying to obtain euthanasia for this house will have an uphill task?
My lords, the shorter and more pithy it makes its exchanges, I'm sure the longer of its expectation of life will be.
You can ask 10-second questions. Lasting 10 seconds. I mean, may I ask the noble lord whether he doesn't think that in a century which has seen more people killed than any other, and individuals in that century have a right to choose at the end of the day whether to stick it out a bit longer or call it a day. Surely that is reasonable, considering that science can call it a day so quickly.
My lords, I repeat, it is the view of Her Majesty's government that life is sacred, and the choice that the government has is how best to protect those who wish to continue to live from those who wish that they would not.